What up, y'all? Mr. Zoo Nation, aka Saboteur Jim Giraffe, and welcome to another episode of Megacolony Friday. Today, we're going to be talking about all the Megacolony units that's been released this whole past week. Today is going to be a special episode as we not only figure out what the cradle mechanical can do, what the fuck, the cradle mechanic can do, but also what Gredora could do. Oh my god, I cannot wait. I talked about it. I did like a little live reaction on what I thought about, like my first impressions with Gredora and everything else. But now that I kind of looked at it more, because sometimes you have like a little doubt and you take a second look and everything else, and honestly, I still kind of feel the same way. This is going to be actually pretty good. So, with that being said, we got like a lot of cards to cover today, so we're going to be talking about them. So I'm going to basically give a rating, basically, one being the worst, five being the best, and everything else like that. All right. So with that being said, before we start looking at the cards, let's talk about the cradle mechanic. Oh my god. So, what Cradle does is the unit with the Cradle marker loses its original ability. It gets its power reduced by its original power, and it cannot boost or intercept. When the unit with a Cradle marker is retired, you search your deck for up to one card with the same grade as that unit, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. Oh my god. This shit is amazing. Okay, so I I know not everybody's been on my channel for that long, which is understandable. But I did at one particular point talk about that they needed to improve the paralyzing mechanic. Because here's the thing. The paralyzed mechanic is a prime example of expectations versus reality. Here's the thing. When you paralyze a unit, your expectations is putting your opponent in, what will I call this? Putting your opponent in an ultimatum. So the ultimatum is your opponent just lets the unit stay at rest. Or if it's a grade 2 unit, they're forced to use it as an intercept. The second one is they wait was your opponent has to waste resources in order to restand said unit. For a prime example on this, the Genesis matchup, like from back in the day, they had the stand trigger. I forgot what the. Oh, actually, it was more than just a stand trigger. They had like one of the units that like restood with the revelation mechanic and stuff like that. So in order to restand like said unit, they had to waste one of the revelation cards in order to restand a unit. That would be basically them wasting resources and everything else like that. The problem in the reality with all this is that it doesn't go as expected as you want it to, because for a few reasons. One, the mechanic was too slow. Two, it was the fact that you didn't really punish your opponent hard enough. And the last one was that the mechanic became outdated at a certain point. So here's what I mean by this. So, um, we got it to a point where the normal hand size in every fighter's hand is like 12 cards. We did get up to a point where they had a lot of cards. So if they were to replace one of the stun units, it wouldn't even matter. Because at the end of the day, it was like they only lost one card. They still got like 11 plus cards left. And then you also got to remember that 90% of the decks has some type of resource in order for them to just replace the field without replacing the card in hand in general. So I kind of feel like that there was just way too many things going against the mechanic in general. And the mechanic definitely needed to improve. For a prime example, maybe we get something similar to the Grade 4 Dark Phase, where whatever units that was chosen, and yes, I understand that that unit doesn't really paralyze any units, but you also got to remember that the units that were chosen by it instantly couldn't be chosen. Your opponent couldn't choose it for card effects. So if they were to get a trigger, they couldn't even put the power in the critical or the power and restand units and all this other stuff on it. So you'll just stun the units, then you'll use the dark phase in order to choose those particular units, and they can't restand or anything else like that. It was like there was kind of something for it. If like the paralyzed mechanic kind of upgraded to have more effects like that, maybe it could have lasted longer. But then you also got to remember that the only time I feel like that the mechanic completely crippled the opponent was when you stun when you paralyzed the Vanguard. I feel like that was like the biggest hit, and sometimes that wasn't even like the best thing. But at the same time, I also got to remember that like in order to punish your opponent, there was only one particular card that can punish your opponent. That was Sand Giraffe. If anybody remembers, not Evil Armor, but the second one. The one where you choose a unit, you rest it, you can't stand, and if it gets retired before the end of your opponent's turn, then they're forced to retire one of their other units. So it basically gave like your opponent a punishment in order to replace the unit and whatnot. So it's completely understandable. Um, my thing is with the cradle mechanic, it's kind of sort of everything that you really wanted in the paralyzed mechanic. You're able to get something off the unit being retired. You're able to prevent the unit from intercepting. You're preventing it from boosting and everything in between. So I mean, the cradle mechanic is basically what the paralyzed mechanic should have evolved into. In technicality, it did evolve into that. I mean, think about if we had this, like maybe like at the end of the G era. If we had this at the end of the G era, oh my god, we would have been busted. But that's besides the point. We got it now. It's pretty interesting. I love it. A lot of people are calling it diet lock, which is kind of sort of true. Here's the issue though. Here's one particular issue with this. In order to get the search ability, the unit has to be retired. So if you're going against Link Joker and your opponent locks it, then you don't get the search. If you're going against Nubatama or Bermuda Triangle and they bounce the unit back because the unit wasn't retired, you don't get the search at all. But then you also got to remember that there are decks like Pale Moon that are able to pull out a full field, but at the same time they can put their cards back, so you don't really put any cradle cards in a thing. So when you put all that into consideration, what do you do now in those particular situations? Luckily, in standard format, there is kind of sort of a solution, and I do feel like that since we haven't got all the cards yet, there is a possibility that we might already have a solution. So the solution, without the one I mentioned earlier, if you're going against Link Joker, that means you have to kill the unit on the exact same turn. They just can't stay with the cradle marker. You have to kill them off on that particular turn, because if not, they're just gonna lock it, and then you're just gonna lose the marker, and everything will be all for nothing. Understandable. The second one is Nubatama, actually the same thing with Nubatama and Bermudas. If they bounce something back, then obviously you got to kill them off before they're able to bounce like said unit back, which is mainly going to be on their turn. So you have to kill them off on your turn. You just can't leave anybody behind with the cradle mechanic. And then of course Pale Moon. I feel like if we get that one particular card, it will probably help a lot more than it should. So this is what I'm talking about. If we get a card that is able to dish out a cradle marker during your opponent's turn, I highly doubt we'll get this. But if we do get a card like this, this will definitely help the cradle mechanic out 10 times better. This will definitely help out those bad matchups like Pale Moon and stuff like that can just get rid of everything. That can call a full field and just get rid of everything. Or Gray and Blue that can do the exact same thing. So when you put all that to consideration, there's hope. There's hope because we haven't got everything revealed yet. I think we're probably going to get maybe 2 or 3 cards like next week, but we'll see. But outside of that, let's talk about all of the other cards that we are getting with the thing, because this is enough about the cradle mechanic. I talked about it long enough. Let's get the rest of this thing started. So the first thing we're going to look at is Clear Breeze. It's a grade 1 that has the following ability. Vanguard Rearguard Circle, when placed, cause discard a card from your hand, draw a card. If you discarded a grade 3 for this cost, choose one of your opponent's rearguards without any cradle marker and put a cradle marker on it. Okay, so pretty simple skill, pretty interesting. You don't have to waste a counter blast, you don't have to waste a soul blast, you just have to discard a card from hand. If you discard a grade 3, then you basically get the cradle marker and everything else like that. It's pretty interesting because of a couple of reasons. One, you can basically put this in any Megacolony build, so you don't even have to put it in the Gredora build. You can just put it in like Gunning Kaleo or something like that, which is pretty interesting in my honest opinion. But at the same time, the fact that you can use this on the Vanguard Circle, there's going to be definitely times where you don't have a grade 2 or grade 3. You just discard a card. You'll probably get that grade 2 within that thing just in case you don't get it from the starter draw. You can basically have a second chance at this particular card. It doesn't always have to be a cradle marker. You don't always have to put a cradle marker on something, so that's actually pretty good. Regardless, this card has value regardless if you don't put the cradle marker on it or not. And of course, with the cradle marker, is searchable and everything else like that. I would say like the only issue is it's a grade 1, and the reason why I say that's an issue is because, let's be real, some of the best units in Megacolony comes from the grade 1 genre, and well, not the grade 1 genre, but the grade 1 pool. And the way I'm looking at it, I know not everybody builds the deck that way, but the way I'm looking at it, all the grade 1s should just be searchers, and it should just be searchers and counter chargers. So searchers and counter chargers, that's mainly what the grade 1 lineup should be. The only reason why I say that is because I feel like that all your grade 1s have to have some type of resource. Now, because you do get to draw a card and stuff like that and do like a 1-for-1 trade, you technically are getting the resources. And luckily, because the cradle mechanic allows you to search for almost any type of grade, you basically can you basically don't always have to run like all of the grade 3 searchers. So it's even a possibility that you don't even have to really run a Hornet anymore. Like at most you can probably run like Dorcas, because we already know Little Dorcas is going to be the grade 1, and it's probably going to have to do like if your opponent has like a cradle marker, it gets 5k or some shit. I don't know. It's going to basically be like that. Of course, we do have stealth machining, multipede, and everything. And we also have Butterfly Officer. That should be a thing as well. So I do kind of see like that there is like a way to put this grade 1 in. It's just going to be very, very tight, and we're going to also have to see what other grade 1s come in this set too. But for now, I will give it a 3.5 out of 5. That's what I'm basically giving this unit. All right, the next one. The first of the two grade 2s, Melody Mutant Nil Nymphia. So I think I'm saying that correctly. I do love the artwork too. Oh my gosh, it looks amazing. But anyway, uh, continuous Vanguard rearguard circle. During your turn, if a cradle marker is on your opponent's rear guards, this unit gets power plus 6k. In auto, when retired from rearguard circle by your card's ability, call Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards without a cradle marker, and put a cradle marker on it. So it's actually pretty interesting. This goes completely well with Gredora, because Gredora allows you to like retire a unit. The only issue that I do have with this is that we don't have any other units outside of Gredora that just straight retire your own units. Now, it is a possibility that we are going to get more units that allows you to retire other units from the rearguard circle, which is understandable. And if we do get those, then this card definitely sees a lot more value. Now, I'm not saying that this card won't see any play. Of course, this card would definitely see play in, Gredora decks and stuff like that. But like I said, there's not any other unit in Megacolony that really like retires your own units. So it's kind of sort of like a 50-50 with this particular card. I do appreciate the fact that it is a Soul Blast instead of a Counter Blast, because from the looks of the new support, it does look like this deck is going to be Counter Blast heavy again compared to how it was last time. But outside of all that, I do like the Soul Blast and stuff like that. And, the cost isn't really that bad. And it does keep a continuous 6k, during your turn, if the cradle marker is on one, is the if a cradle marker is like on your field and whatnot. So I can't necessarily say that this is a completely bad card, but I could see this not played at a full set. I can definitely tell you that. So for now, the grade that I would give this card is a 3 out of 5. Not saying that it'll probably go up depending on what else we get in this set, but for now, 3 out of 5. The last grade 2 we're going to go at is probably my favorite artwork as far as like female ones wise. Not gonna lie. Despoiling Muting Sticky Bolus. I guess Nikki Bolas from Magic the Gathering just turned into a female somehow. But anyway, Auto Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When placed, calls Counterblast 1. Look at the top 6 cards from your top of your deck. Reveal a total of 2 cards with Dark Face and their different card names from among them. Put into your hand and shuffle your deck. When it attacks, call Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power 6k to the end of the battle for each of your opponent's rear guards with a cradle marker on them. If this unit's power is 20k or greater, draw a card. Put it in every single Megacolony deck. I don't give a fuck. You don't know why? Because this works perfectly with the Dark Face thing. It's basically a secondary grade 3 searcher, which is actually pretty good, which means you don't have to run Machining Mantis at a full 4 anymore. This actually works pretty well. But it's the second ability that makes it very good. The fact that, once again, I'm pretty glad it is a Soul Blast, but it also gives power 6k and it has a possible draw. Now, the simple fact that you don't always have to have a cradle marker on your opponent's side of the field, just the fact that you can get the draw off of it being 20k or higher is a thing. And that's why I said it should be in every single Megacolony deck, because not only it gains power, which means that we can start hitting with numbers, but it also allows you to draw a card, definitely compared to like let's say Hiding Killer Leaf. Hiding Killer Leaf, you do get the draw, but that's only if your opponent mills something that's not a grade 0.
And because of that, I feel like that getting this unit to 20k or greater is a lot easier than getting your opponent to drop something that's not a zero. Because let's be real, I've been on those times where every time I use his ability, multiple times in a match, it will always be a grade zero for some odd ass reason. I am thankful that those are just triggers that are no longer in my opponent's field, but at the same time, I hate it because I do not get the draw, especially at the times where I definitely need the draw the most. So yeah, I would definitely give this unit a 4 out of 5 because this unit is amazing. Inside and outside Dark Face. Oh yeah, and that's right, premium play. That's another reason. Moving on. Now, for the last two, both of the Dark Faces. First, Intimidating Mutant Dark Face. My boy is back, aka the 2018 BCS MVP Finals, World Finals MVP. Intimidating Mutant Dark Face. Let's do this. First, Auto, Vanguard Rearguard Circle. Win plays, cost. Discard a card from your hand, choose one of your opponent's rear guards without a cradle marker, and put a cradle marker on it. Second ability, Auto Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, costs Counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards with a cradle marker on it, retire it, and this unit gives power 5k to the end of the turn for each grade of the chosen unit. My god, where do I even begin with this? First, despite that it does use a counterblast, it also uses a discard from hand, which is actually something pretty interesting. Plus, it is also an on place and isn't an on attack skill, so I do like that as well. Sadly, it's not going. It doesn't put more than one cradle marker on it, but it will be interesting if it does. But let's be real, we're not going to get too greedy. The second thing, it is the fact that you get to retire a rear guard with a cradle marker on it. Now, at the moment, at the time of the recording this video, this is the only unit that is going to retire something without attacking it, which is the best and the sad part about it, because I do feel like if we get maybe one or two more units that allows you to retire your opponent's units, not just your own, then I definitely feel like that this will be the cradle and this will definitely be something that would help out the deck a lot. Now, if we don't get that, I guarantee we might get that on like whenever the next set we ever get support again. But the reason why I feel like I don't think we'll get another one in this particular set is because the cradle mechanic is new. They don't probably want it to be completely busted, and if we get stuff to just retire stuff for no apparent reason, then maybe it'll just contribute to that. But outside of that, I do feel like maybe if we don't get two more units, just give us one more unit. Just give us something that isn't like Dark Face restricted and just completely generic. I guarantee you, this will work. This will work for the deck for the better, and that's basically why I like this unit. Um, it basically has everything that you definitely need to work with Gredora. It definitely has everything that you don't have to work that you can work even without Gredora. Even if you don't ride into Gredora and you miss your Gredora ride, he's still a pretty decent ride. So that's what I also like about that too. He's not completely useless if you have to play him on the Vanguard circle. So with all of that being said, I definitely give this guy a 4.5 out of 5. It might change up to a 5 out of 5, to be honest, when you really think about it, because he has so much potential. I'm glad that they brought my boy back. My god, this is amazing. Last but not least, Evil Governor Darkface Gredora. The unit that we all been waiting for. Active Vanguard Circle, hard once per turn, costs Counterblast 1, Choose up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards without any cradle markers and put a cradle marker on each of them. Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost retire rear guard. Search your deck for up to one grade 3. Call it the rear guard circle and shuffle your deck. If you called that unit and this unit gives power 10k until the end of the turn, man, where do I even begin? Alright, so despite that doesn't have a rear guard skill, where it really doesn't need a rear guard skill, I will admit I think it will be low-key busted if like the second ability was a rear guard skill as well. But outside of that, man, this is amazing. This basically grants Megacolony multiple attacks. We already know some of the stuff that it can be, that the alternate grade 3s could be with, the ones that you can call. Of course, you can call Antlion. Of course, you can call Hell Demise. Those are the two main ones that a lot of people are looking. Of course, Intimidate Mutant Darkface. Basically any grade 3 with a decent rear guard skill is acceptable calling this. Like I pointed out in my previous video, this is basically both a revamp of her original effect and her grade 4 effect. At the same time, the second ability being the grade 4 effect, the first ability being the grade 3 effect. I am glad that this is not an on place, that you could just use it as an axe skill, not an auto skill. Because if it was an axe skill, this would have been trash. I'm not gonna lie. If the first ability was an auto skill, I would have been like, they just downgraded her to hell. It still would have been a good ability, don't get me wrong, especially seeing the fact that you had to that it does 2 units instead of 1. But still, if it was an on place, everybody would have been rioting, because that would have been trash. But it isn't. It's an axe skill. We're amazed at this. Here's the issue. Because you are running 4 Gredora and 4 Darkface, that leaves you with little room for other grade 3s. Now, I have been trying to figure out what will be the perfect grade 3 in order to use this with. And usually if I see a grade 3, there's usually some type of backfire to it. There's like some type of backlash to it. For a prime example, yes, Hell Demise would be like a perfect one, but sometimes you're not always going to have the field for it, and the one that you're restanding probably isn't going to be that great. But outside of that, it does grant you like a maximum of 5 attacks, because attack with that unit, attack with a unit, attack with another one, attack with your Vanguard, call Hell Demise over one of the front row rear guards, restand the other one, attack with Hell Demise, attack with the other unit and stuff like that, which is understandable. You get like 5 attacks, so that's actually pretty good in my honest opinion. But sometimes I do feel like that you could take a little bit more of an advantage of her secondary skill. So one of the things that I kind of sort of want to try out is mixing up the cradle mechanic and the mill mechanic. And the reason why I say that this will be interesting is because the alternate grade 3 could be Dove Speed, and it could be it could be Sakomatooth. Because think about this, you're hitting your opponent with a bunch of the cradle mechanic, you're already getting rid of their field and whatnot, and you already got the field control. Just adding on top of that with the mill mechanic basically gives you the deck control as well. So basically you have this thing where you're not only controlling what's on the field, but you're also controlling like what's in, what triggers they can get and what some of the units they can get with and stuff like that as well. So you're doing a self mill, and you're doing not a self mill, you're doing a regular mill, and you're doing the cradle thing all together. Plus you're adding all of this pressure with all these multiple attacks. And then you also got to remember Dove Speed, he does 2 cards, not 1. I kind of failed to mention that in the last video, but he does. But he mills 2 cards, and if at least one of them was a grade 1 or higher, then your opponent is forced to guard with 2 or more cards in hand. That puts on a lot of pressure, especially if the triggers that you get are critical triggers. He's already getting a plus 10k, which is something that the unit was definitely missing. But at the same time, you are also putting like a lot of pressure on your opponent and forcing them to guard with 2 or more cards. And this definitely comes into play when your opponent is at like 4 or 5 damage. The everything is, the guard restrict is real, but then you also got to remember that Cyclomatooth also has the ability of giving himself 10k, and then if you mill a grade 1 or greater from your opponent's deck, he also gets a built-in critical, and this is all before triggers. So at the end of the day, you could just call Cyclomatooth. He gains a 10k from Gredora. You also gain a 10k from his skill, and you have the possibility, the 50-50 chance of getting a built-in critical alongside alongside whatever criticals that you got during the drive checks. So honestly, I do feel like that Cyclomatooth in Dove Speed shouldn't be overlooked as the alternative grade 3s instead of just Heldemize. And with Antlion, I will admit, Antlion is also a pretty decent grade 3 to do as well. But unless if we get something that allows us to put a grade 3 into the soul pretty early, which I will admit you could technically do that with Megalar Lancer. Which basically means you gotta probably play Megalar Lancer. But if we can do something a little bit more faster, I guess, if that makes any sense, then it would basically give you a reason to play it'll basically give you a reason to play Antlion. But I definitely feel like unless if there's like a way to get grade 3s to the soul pretty quickly, Antlion is kind of sort of out of the question. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't run them. I definitely encourage you to run Antlion if it's possible. But I just feel like that unless there's a way to get a grade 3 into the soul pretty quickly on like your first grade 3 turn, then there's no point of really doing it. I mean, there probably is a way, like I said, make a Megalar Lancer, but at the same time, you just have to do it at a timely manner. So, with that being said, I definitely give Gredora. I'ma at the moment give Gredora a 4.5 out of 5 for one particular reason. I'm gonna give her a 4.5 out of 5 because I don't know what else is coming in this set. We just have to figure out what's coming in here. Otherwise, she's definitely a 5. No ands or buts about it. There is one thing I would like to add very quickly before I let you guys go. There has been like a little talk in the premium version of Megacolony as to whether you use the old Gredora or the new one. And at first, I was up for using both because both of them does have some pretty good things. If you use both and you ride into the new Gredora first, while your opponent's still at grade 2, you give them the pressure of getting an extra grade 3 into the onto the field and whatnot, thus giving you the possibility of using Antlion skill a lot easier and a lot faster, because of course now that you not only have Megalar Lancer, you also have Armor Beetle that puts stuff into the soul from the field pretty quickly. So when you put all that into consideration, yes, I definitely feel like that you should kind of run the new one. But after thinking about how ridiculous the old one is, where you get to force one of the columns not to be used, which is pretty useful even in today's meta, that your opponent is forced to not use two circles, which is understandable. Now, of course, this is kind of questionable against Excel decks, but it's whatever. Plus, you also have the ability of countercharging and Yeah, countercharging on your side of field and putting a card face down from your opponent's damage zone face down. So you do have something like that. That's why I'm like, okay, maybe the old Gredora at 4 is actually a lot better than using a new one. Um, the only thing that I kind of feel like that I have a problem with is you won't get a protect marker, because technically I really want to make the premium build 12 critical for 4 heals, and for the criticals being the sentinel crit. So that means that my perfect guards has to be the protect markers. But seeing that if I'm not going to use the new Gredora and I use the old one, I'm basically just running the risk of not having a perfect guard altogether, which technically shouldn't really be that bad, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. Sometimes it's just stuff that I definitely want to perfect guard, and that's completely understandable. But for now, I talked long enough. It kind of feels more like a podcast instead of like an actual thing. So for now, my name is Mr. Zoo Nation, aka Salvatore Jones Giraffa, signing out.